What does it mean when you fail as a leader in a startup or heck, any small business for that matter? What are some signs that you're not fulfilling your role? And more importantly, how do you fix it? Let's get into that right now. Welcome back to the show, The Business Mastery for Startups, Scaleups, and Small Business with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. Today in episode 10, we're going to look at the leadership piece of the startup and small business equation. So let's start off with some signs that maybe not everything's right in paradise and you've got some problems brewing if you're the leader. So imagine for a moment you're a startup founder or an early stage business leader or a small business operator, and your team is not performing to expectations, or maybe even worse, or at least easier to diagnose, they're no longer performing to expectations. That's a sign that there's a problem. Or maybe you aren't getting feedback from your team anymore, whether it's complaints or good news. You walk into the room and it goes quiet as a funeral. How about this? Your top performers are leaving, or you're experiencing employee churn of any kind. But people that you count on, people that have been the bulwark against the storm, the cornerstones of your foundation are leaving the company, are going away. What if you're getting fewer top candidates through the interview process to the offer stage? So these top folks are leaving, and as your recruiters or you are out there in the market trying to replace them, you can't get the real rock stars to commit. Or on the other side of things, your clients are becoming non-receptive. They're starting to ghost you. These are 5 signs, again, that there's trouble in paradise. These are 5 signs that you as a leader have some issues that need to be addressed. Let's look at that now. Let's look at how we can unpack that and find solutions to these problems. Well, the first fix, and this is going to surprise exactly none of you who've listened to any of the other episodes or watched one of my YouTube videos or read my book or interact with me in any way, this one's going to come as no surprise, but it's to engage more. Your superpower as a leader, the way that you execute your will, the way that you gather data, the way that you succeed in your role is to engage with your clients, your customers, your candidates, your employees, your investors, any people that you interact with in a meaningful way. Most of the examples I gave today are team focused and team leadership focused. So let's stay on that side of the equation for a minute. But engaging more with your team will help you to discover exactly where the problem lies. Now, quick story here. When I was in the Marines, when I made the rank of sergeant, I was working for a gunnery sergeant in my company. And he gave me my first project to complete as a sergeant with a team of Marines to do that work. Now, I'd led other projects before, but this was my first time as a sergeant, meaning there's a little bit more weight to it. And he said to me, Sergeant Gadori, if your Marines aren't complaining to you, it's not because they're happy. He said, Marines always complain. It's just the nature of things. And my experience up to that point proved that statement true. So I was very receptive. But he said, if they're getting quiet, it's because they no longer trust you. And that really stuck with me because I've seen, even in my civilian life, that holds true. If your team doesn't feel psychologically safe, they're not going to share something that would put them potentially at risk. If they don't feel psychologically safe, there's not going to be an environment of open and honest communication. It will not be possible to have direct, meaningful accountability and communication because they are not going to be willing to engage. So how do we resolve that problem? We engage. We as the leaders initiate that engagement, and we preface it with the outcome before we start our conversation, whatever it may be. Why? Because when we start engaging out of the blue, and we hadn't before, or hadn't in some time, or we drained all of our deposits from the relationship bank, a Coveyism, I know, because that's our second thing, deposits in the relationship bank. But we've drained all those deposits, again, more on that in a second, then they don't want to talk to us. And they look at our engagement suspiciously. They look at it as a potential trap. So if we preface whatever it is that we're asking or saying, in other words, we let them know why we're asking that question, we're more likely to get a response. So what do I mean by that? Perfect example would be this. Again, it's very quiet. You walk, or even worse yet, it's not quiet at all. There's conversation, banter going back and forth. You walk into the room and it quiets down. Rather than either, worst thing, ignore it, B, better but still not good, ask about it, or C, preface and then ask, let's give this a test run. So you walk into the room, it gets quiet, and you say, I notice this has happened a few times. It's gotten quiet when I come in. I feel like I've done something that's caused a problem here, and I want to understand how to fix it. Can you all tell me what happened here? Better yet still, pull aside somebody who you feel like you've got a stronger rapport with. Maybe it's somebody from your original founding team that's been there from the beginning. They have a stronger vested interest in your outcome because they've been there from the beginning. They've got more time and service here, and they're more vested. So that doesn't have to be a literal equity sense. It can just be time there. But regardless, when you pull them aside and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. long-term team member, things are different now than they were in the beginning, and I feel like I've done something to cause that. I want to resolve that problem. Can you share with me what's changed? Can you share with me what I've done? So a lot of things have happened in those statements. Number one, we've prefaced so that person understands why we're asking this question, so they're more likely to feel safe to share the response. But number two, and I hope you notice this, we owned the problem. We didn't go out and fish and leave blame to be assigned later. We owned the problem. We said it was us, and then we went on. If we later discover it's not us, that's fine. Whatever. But by owning the problem, we create a safer space psychologically for that person to speak because they won't feel like they're potentially assigning blame somewhere else. And ultimately, it is our problem and it is our fault because as a leader, the buck stops with us. So even if there is a person on the floor that's creating a problem that we haven't seen, the fact that we haven't seen it is our responsibility to resolve. So regardless, I stand by that statement. So that's the first part, engage, engage, engage. The second part, as I teased to a ridiculous level, is deposits in the relationship bank. You all know I'm a huge Stephen Covey fan, and one of the things that he talks about that's a masterclass in human interaction is viewing a relationship with two people as though there were a bank in the middle. Every time you do something for that person, every time that you do something that reinforces the relationship, you're making a deposit into that bank account. Every time you ask something of them, every time you do something to them, every time you cause a problem for them, you're removing something from that relationship bank. There comes a time when that bank can be empty or even worse, overdrawn. And that may be the case here. You may, A, have stopped engaging, which diminishes the flow of things being deposited in that relationship bank. You may have made a change that they disliked that as time goes on makes a consistent withdrawal from that bank. You may have changed something that's caused real problems, that caused a massive withdrawal. But regardless of the circumstances, when silence is your companion when you walk into a room, odds are very good that you have withdrawn either to empty or overdraw levels, everything from that relationship bank. And that brings us to the third thing, and that's that this is a process, not an event. you're not going to fix it overnight. You need to consistently rebuild the relationships that have been damaged over time. And you do that by engaging. Preface your question, ask your question, let them know the outcome you're looking to achieve. That will gradually rebuild the trust, make deposits in that mythical relationship bank we've talked about, and get things back on track. Another thing to keep in mind as we're remembering that this is going to be a process, not an event, is to embrace the EFG framework: engage, fulfill, grow. I talk about this all the time. I've talked about in other videos. I've talked about in other episodes, so I won't deep dive it here. Just quick overview. Engage with your team. Make sure they're fulfilled in their roles. Make sure that they're growing in their skills and responsibilities in their current role, and ideally have a path beyond that. When you do that, most employees are going to stay because you've given them no reason to leave. So make sure to embrace that in your interactions. It's easy to get away from this, especially if you're newer to it, because habits take time to form. And if you're getting away from it, that may well be the change that is causing the problem. If you've never embraced it before, this will help you to resolve it. I stand strongly by that statement. And always, fifth tip, always, before opening your mouth and interacting with them, try to understand where that person is coming from and how you can speak to whatever it is in terms of what they get out of it. Now, we tend to do this pretty consistently on the sales side. We know that this client, this customer, has a desired outcome in buying our product or using our service. And we know that that's what they care most about. So good salespeople tend to speak in terms of what they get out of this interaction. But we tend not to do it as consistently with our internal team. And that's a huge mistake, because those relationships are at least as important as the client ones. I'd argue quite a bit more important, since a happy employee is going to breed happy clients, and the inverse isn't always true. So always think through it. And by the way, credit where credit's due. That's another Coveyism: seek first to understand before being understood. But always make sure when you are engaging with them and someone brings you a piece of information, especially if it doesn't click right away where they're coming from and why that's important, always ask yourself, what does this mean to them? And how can I formulate my response to highlight what they get out of the outcome? That is a game changer. That alone is worth you spending the 15 minutes or so to listen to this episode. But let me give you a bonus one. So I gave you 5 problems and I gave you 5 solutions. But let me give you a bonus one here as well. If you've read my book, Destination Employer, or you've read any of my LinkedIn content, or you've seen any of the YouTube videos over on the YouTube channel, you might recognize 2 things here. One, of course, is the EFG framework. That's our proprietary framework that we teach in Destination Employer, in the book, in the program, and in our consulting business. That you probably is easy to notice. But did you notice the second thing? Did you see the second aspect of this, or catch it in the language that I've used throughout this episode? Here it is. This is a change management process. And if you treat it like a change management process or exercise, again, which it is, because you're changing your interaction with your team and how you lead, you'll have more success because you'll apply the change management rules to this. What are the change management rules? Thank you for asking. The change management rules are simple. Change management's a process, not an event. You need to over-communicate through that process. You need to be present there and provide support until the new thing becomes a habit, so it's the old thing. Remember, bad habits don't get broken, they get replaced. And change management follows that same philosophy. By giving support until these new things are habit, that's how you get that new change to stick. Now, in this example, you're the change. So support yourself, make notes, use whatever tools you need to ensure that you keep doing this long enough that it becomes habit for you again as well. But again, support it through until it becomes habit. And then finally, create or cultivate stakeholder allies. Now, if we're doing a software implementation, we know that the more of that company's stakeholders we can get on our side and pro this change, the easier the change is. Applies here too. Again, those long-term employees, those folks you had a strong relationship with that, again, for whatever reason has diminished, if we can get them on our side, they're going to support this change in our absence. And that's key because you can't be there all the time. And if you got people speaking positively on your behalf, especially if they're long-term folks who have a lot of their own strong reputation in the team, that's a huge win. So that's what we covered today. How to recognize problems in leadership that are yours and some ways to fix them. If you like this type of content, please give us a like and subscribe wherever you watch this. And if you want more like it beyond wherever you watch this, don't hesitate to jump over to destinationemployer.co. If you sign up for our Startup Leaders guide, or you download the first chapter of my book, Destination Employer, in audio format, then you'll jump on our email list, and I'll be able to share more stuff there as well. So again, thanks very much for listening. Look forward to talking to you next week. Between now and then, make sure you make something awesome.